Ladies and gentlemen, in a world of masks, impressions, and borrowed identities, it becomes increasingly difficult to discern who a person truly is. We are surrounded by curated personas, crafted smiles, rehearsed kindness, and performative empathy. Yet if you seek to understand someone not as they appear but as they are, then you must train your eye not on what is visible, but on what is revealed in patterns. Carl Jung once said, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." From this deep well of psychological truth, I offer you today 5 signs, subtle yet powerful, that unveil a person's true character. Observe these, and you will see not just who they claim to be, but who they truly are. Of all the revelations of character, none is more profound than how a person treats those who are powerless. It is easy, deceptively easy, to display charm, grace, and generosity when there is something to gain. Most people wear kindness like a costume when it suits them, particularly in the presence of authority, beauty, or influence. But the real measure of a soul lies not in how it acts before a crowd, but in how it behaves when no one of status is watching, especially when faced with someone who holds no power, no leverage, no utility. Carl Jung understood that much of our personality is not truly our own, but a social adaptation, a mask or persona, as he called it. But how someone behaves when interacting with those they don't need to impress peels away that mask and exposes the truth underneath. When someone is kind to the janitor, the server, the beggar on the street, not for show, but instinctively, naturally, it reveals an internal orientation that transcends social conditioning. It shows that compassion is not something they do, but something they are. There is a quiet nobility in those who respect the dignity of every human being, regardless of their title or circumstance. They are not seduced by the illusion of hierarchy. They see the humanity in all, recognizing that no person is beneath them, and that we are all, in the end, fellow travelers in suffering and hope. But watch the person who is sweet to the CEO and dismissive to the cleaner, who flatters up the ladder and steps over those below it. That person is not kind. They are strategic. They are not generous. They are transactional. Their virtue is conditional, and it will collapse the moment there is nothing to gain. True character does not change based on who is watching. It is consistent, even when no reward follows. It is in the gentle word offered to someone who has nothing. It is in the patience extended to someone who cannot defend themselves. It is in the willingness to serve, even when there is no applause. To witness someone's interaction with the powerless is to glimpse the architecture of their soul. For it is in the presence of the voiceless that the voice of one's true self begins to echo. And that echo speaks the truth louder than any speech ever could. Adversity is the great revealer. It strips away the illusion of control, the rehearsed personas, and the borrowed confidence we wear when life is predictable. It is easy to be graceful when everything flows in your favor, when the path is smooth, when applause is abundant, and when every plan unfolds as intended. But when the ground shifts, when plans fall apart, when the storm comes uninvited and refuses to leave, this is where the mask cracks. This is where a person's true nature emerges. Carl Jung taught that the process of individuation, the journey to become one's most authentic self, demands confrontation with the shadow, the unknown, the painful. Adversity is that confrontation in motion. It invites us, or rather compels us, to meet the hidden parts of ourselves, and in doing so, it reveals who has done the inner work and who has only performed strength. Watch how someone reacts when things go wrong. Do they collapse into blame? Do they point outward, condemning others for their pain, desperately avoiding responsibility? Or do they pause, reflect, and begin the uncomfortable process of looking inward? The former is the path of avoidance, of ego, of projection. The latter is the path of transformation, humility, and inner growth. There are those who wear resilience like armor, who appear composed in crisis but are silently eroding inside, because they have never learned to sit with uncertainty, grief, or fear. And then there are those who tremble, who fall, who bleed openly. But they rise not with bitterness, but with wisdom. These are the souls who understand that suffering is not the enemy, it is the teacher. That brokenness is not shameful, it is sacred. Adversity reveals whether a person will lean into their wounds or run from them, whether they will turn their pain into wisdom, or let it fester into resentment, whether they will use hardship to deepen their compassion for others, or to harden themselves against the world. In times of loss and failure, when someone has every right to be cruel or withdrawn, but instead chooses to remain kind, humble, and reflective, that is a soul who has transcended ego. That is someone who has met their darkness and chosen not to be ruled by it. You cannot know who someone truly is by how they act in comfort. You must see them in crisis, because in crisis there is no script. There is no performance. There is only raw essence, and in that rawness the soul speaks clearly, for perhaps the first time. And if you listen closely, you will see not just what they are suffering from, but what they are made of. Boredom and silence, two of the most underestimated forces in human experience, are, in truth, profound mirrors of the soul. They strip away distraction, dismantle illusion, and leave us face to face with the raw, unaided self. Most people flee from them, not because they are unbearable in themselves, but because of what they reveal. In silence, there is no applause. In boredom, no stimulation. What remains is you. And for many that is the most terrifying thing of all. Carl Jung spoke often of the need to integrate the unconscious, to turn inward, and face the forgotten or denied aspects of ourselves. Yet our modern world offers endless opportunities to do the opposite. The moment we feel stillness approach, we scroll, binge, call, consume. Anything to avoid sitting alone with our own thoughts. But this avoidance is not neutral, it is a sign. It shows that what lies within has not been made peace with, that there is something inside unhealed, unknown, or deeply uncomfortable. Watch how a person responds to silence. Are they agitated, reaching for their phone, changing the subject, needing constant noise, motion, or external validation? That behavior is not just restlessness, it's resistance. It speaks of an inner world that has never been properly explored. For when the outer world is quiet, the inner world gets loud. And those who haven't learned to listen often cannot bear the volume. But there are others, rare but real, who treat silence not as an enemy but as a sacred companion. These are the individuals who have ventured into the labyrinth of their own psyche, who have faced their demons, their longings, their regrets, and their dreams without fleeing. For them, silence is not empty, it is alive. It is a space where truth can arise, where intuition can speak, and where the soul can breathe. Boredom, too, is misunderstood. It is not the absence of meaning, but the absence of distraction. It is an invitation, an opening. To the creative mind, boredom becomes a canvas. To the reflective soul, it becomes a mirror. Those who fear boredom have yet to tap into the rich world within themselves. But those who welcome it have discovered that the greatest adventures do not always lie in doing more, but in being more aware, more present, more attuned to the subtle textures of life. A person who can sit quietly without needing to fill the space with noise or movement is someone who has found a kind of internal harmony. They are not escaping their life. They are living it from the inside out. They are capable of deep thought, of presence, of stillness, and in that stillness lies an uncommon strength. So if you want to know someone, don't just watch them in action. Observe them and pause. See what arises in their silence, for it is in that quiet, unguarded space that their true self gently, unmistakably emerges. How a person speaks of others when they are not present is one of the clearest, most revealing indicators of their true nature. In those unguarded moments, when there is no social pressure to be polite, no immediate consequence to their words, and no accountability for fairness or kindness, what emerges from their mouth is often what lives in their heart. Carl Jung emphasized that much of what we say about others is not merely observation. It is projection. The psyche tends to project its own disowned traits onto those around us. That which we have not accepted or integrated within ourselves we unconsciously assign to others. So when someone repeatedly criticizes, mocks, or gossips about others, especially when they are not around to defend themselves, it tells you far more about the speaker than about the subject of their words. A person who habitually tears others down behind their backs is often doing so to elevate themselves, because they lack an inner sense of self-worth. They use gossip as a form of currency, paying for attention, status, or control in a shallow social economy. But this strategy is a hollow one, and over time, it corrodes not only the relationships they destroy, but their own integrity. Listen carefully to the tone they use. Is it laced with envy, sarcasm, bitterness? Do they diminish others to feel superior? Do they exaggerate flaws to create a narrative that suits them? These habits are signs of inner insecurity and unexamined shadow aspects. For as Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. When a person constantly speaks ill of others, they are often unconsciously at war with parts of themselves they cannot yet face. Now, contrast that with someone who speaks with dignity even when the subject is not present, someone who defends the absent, who resists the temptation to gossip, or who offers understanding rather than judgment. This is a person of rare strength and depth. They are not naive, they see flaws, but they do not weaponize them. Their speech reflects an integrated psyche, a centered self that does not need to diminish others to feel whole. It takes real maturity to hold space for someone else's imperfections without turning them into targets, and it takes wisdom to know that the way we speak of others, especially when they are absent, is a direct reflection of our own consciousness. Even more telling is how someone talks about those who have hurt them. Do they speak with vengeance, obsess over revenge, or poison others with resentment? Or do they speak with insight, acknowledging pain but refusing to let it turn them bitter? The latter is the path of individuation. The soul that has done the work, that has alchemized pain into wisdom, and refuses to let darkness dictate its voice. Words are never just words, they are psychic fingerprints, subtle expressions of a person's inner architecture. So if you want to know who someone really is, listen not only to what they say in public, but to what they whisper in private. For in those moments, without the pressure to impress, their true character rises to the surface, clear and unmistakable. And if their words are rooted in grace, integrity, and empathy, even in the absence of others, you are in the presence of a truly evolved soul. What a person chooses to love reveals the blueprint of their soul. We often think of love in romantic terms, but love in its truest form is a reflection of value, of what a person deems meaningful, worthy, and sacred. It is the compass by which they navigate life, whether consciously or unconsciously. If you want to understand someone's character, do not ask what they say they care about. Watch what consistently draws their admiration, their loyalty, their energy. That is where their true nature resides. Carl Jung believed that the choices we make, especially repeatedly and unconsciously, are driven by deep forces within the psyche, archetypes, complexes, desires, wounds, and ideals. Love is one of the purest expressions of those inner forces. What someone chooses to love tells you what they are drawn toward, what they are trying to complete within themselves, what they are seeking in others, and what they are ultimately trying to become. Some love status. They are endlessly captivated by power, prestige, and outward success. They chase the symbols of importance, titles, luxury, recognition, not because they are inherently evil or shallow, but because something inside them feels insufficient. Their love of external greatness is a compensation for an inner sense of smallness, and so they adore what dazzles, not what deepens. Others love control. They seek certainty, dominance, predictability, even over people. They are not comfortable with the unknown or the organic flow of life. This love often comes from a wound, perhaps from chaos or betrayal in early life. And now they seek to master life by never letting go. But this love of control makes them rigid, fearful, incapable of true intimacy, which requires surrender. Still others love attention. Their affections are poured into performance, applause, and the gaze of others. They live for the spotlight, for the validation of the crowd. But what appears to be confidence is often rooted in abandonment. The love of attention is frequently a survival mechanism of someone who once felt invisible. But then, there are those who love truth, who are drawn to wisdom, self-knowledge, and the authenticity of the soul. They seek depth over status, substance over image, meaning over convenience. They are not perfect, but they are sincere. They are not flawless, but they are growing. Their love is not aimed outward to impress the world, but inward to evolve the self. These individuals love the process of becoming. They are drawn to ideas, to philosophy, to kindness, to courage, not because it makes them look good, but because it feels right. They admire those who are vulnerable, not because they are weak, but because they are honest. They seek connection, not possession. And they are more interested in being whole than in being admired. Watch closely what a person returns to, what they speak about with reverence, what they protect without being told, what they defend, even in silence. These things, these subtle loyalties, reveal their soul's orientation, for the heart does not lie. It gravitates toward what it truly values, even when the mind tries to rationalize something else. Jung said, "You become what you love." And this is the deepest truth. A person's destiny is shaped by their devotion. What they choose to love today will determine who they become tomorrow. So if someone loves the shallow, they will become hollow. If they love wisdom, they will become wise. If they love peace, they will become calm. If they love growth, they will rise, even through pain. And so, to see someone clearly, don't just look at their actions. Look at their affections. For where their love lives, their soul follows. So if you seek to know someone, really know them. Forget their words, their smiles, their clothes, their performance. Instead, watch how they treat the invisible. Witness them in their struggle. Sit with them in stillness. Listen when they speak of others. And finally, observe what they choose to cherish. These 5 signs, subtle though they may seem, are psychological doorways. And through them, the truth of a person will not scream, but it will whisper. And if you are still enough to hear it, you will never be deceived again. Because to know the soul of another, you must first learn how to see with your own. Thank you.